Hello and welcome. This is Captain Aquarius coming to you on January 24th, 2017 from Albuquerque Airport in New Mexico, which is why you may occasionally hear in the background of this recording the usual announcements about how you must not leave your bags unattended, or please you must report any suspicious activity, and generally speaking, you must comply with all the things that we tell you to do for purposes of our agendas of control, which we claim actually have something to do with your personal security or municipal security or national security, when none of it has anything to do with the safety of anybody. Welcome to the usual lies in 2017 as we come to the next black moon, the actual first black moon of 2017, and this is traditionally, in some ways, the most important one of the year, because this is the one that begins the Universal New Year, which is still in the Chinese calendar and other Asian calendars that are aligned with it, the beginning of the year, so that the Hindu calendar, the Buddhist calendar, and others all observe this date, which used to be universally observed throughout the Eurasian landmass until in Europe, Julius Caesar, in fact, was the one who decided that the new Roman calendar was going to begin each year on January 1st, which is the New Year's date that we still use today. And so this black moon has a high importance to it traditionally, and it is perfectly appropriate for what is going on at this time. It is, in fact, the Chinese year of the fire cock. That is, the cock as the rooster, the male of the chicken species, particularly remarkable for the loudness and the incessant crowing that he does, which is perfectly appropriate, as you know, to the person who has recently been selected as President of the United States, and all of the other people, millions and millions of them, who are determined to vent their indignation and their displeasure at maximum volume by screaming and yelling and blaming and accusing and doing everything that they can except making any effort to see and appreciate the other person's point of view. So we have a great number of people in furious disagreement with each other all the time over the question that ought to have been resolved in November of last year about which of the two psychopathic criminals who were running for President of the United States should have been given the position of now getting to be, for the next 4 years, the hood ornament on the car. The point of this metaphor is that the hood ornament, standing front center on the car, is always leaning forward, or the figure is pointing forward, and wherever it's pointing, that's the direction the car goes in. And so it appears that this figure is actually doing something to decide where the car is going to move, at least until people begin to wonder, what is behind that tinted glass, and who is actually driving the car? The whole point of the bankster-operated media propaganda system of lies is designed to distract people endlessly from asking this question of who is actually behind the wheel. And so we come therefore to this point in our history in which we have, right at the moment of the Aquarian awakening and the opportunity to coalesce in communal, cooperative understanding, people determined to scream and yell and shout and blame and do everything but come into alignment with one another. They have been doing the same thing for 100 years now, ever since the rise of the labor movement in the United States around the time of World War I. And they have endlessly been shouting the same things: hey, hey, ho, ho, whatever we hate has got to go. And they wonder, why they don't make any headway and why, in fact, it gets worse. The reason for it is simple. Mother Teresa, more recently designated as Saint Teresa of Calcutta, was once invited to come to an anti-war demonstration, and she said, "If you want me to come to an anti-war demonstration, I will never go to such a thing. But if you want to have a demonstration for peace, I'll be there." She understood that the whole energy of protest and demonstration and yelling and shouting is motivated by judgment and anger and hate of what it is that we don't want and we tend to condemn. It doesn't work. It doesn't get us anywhere. If we got to the point of understanding what St. Teresa had in mind, and we began to focus on what we can do by coming into coalition with each other, we might have a chance to get somewhere, and we would be able to move beyond judgment, which in fact has been designated, has been claimed to be the number one obstacle, the number one difficulty for effective growth in the path of spiritual development. Why? Well, necessarily, because judgment is always dividing things apart from and even against other things. I know it well. I was born in the sign of Virgo. And the unevolved side of our sign is endlessly criticizing and tearing down. And so Virgos tend to divide things into lists and boxes and categories. And this is better than that. And I like this more than I like the other thing, instead of just understanding how useless all of this is. How do we see this reflected in the chart that is in front of us here? This is cast, in fact, for 6:06 p.m. on January 27th of 2017 in Mexico City, Mexico. The same black moon will be in effect on the other side of the Atlantic early in the hours of January 28th. Notice what we see here. This is clearly a chart of relationship. We say this because the relationship side of the chart is over on the right, whereas the individual side of the chart is over on the left. Clearly, with a much greater preponderance of planets on the right side of the chart, the emphasis of this month, and indeed potentially of the entire year as it is initiated and launched at this black moon, is in the redefining and the playing of relationships. What does this chart tell us about it? About this, you notice that the moon and the sun in the sign of Aquarius are in exact alignment right at the point to the minute in the seventh house of the chart, the house of marriage, love relationship, and partnership, and they are in a position of opposition to the Leo ascendant at 4 degrees of Leo over on the left of the chart, meaning then, in effect, that there is a tension going on here between relationship and individual desire projection. This is very much connected with what is going on now in the endless blaming and claiming and shouting and complaining. Because the point here, you see, is that what is happening is that people are simply refusing to acknowledge their own shadow. Many of the people who identify themselves as so-called liberals and progressives are, as I was, a person who went through a spiritual conversion of some kind in the 1970s and began to live as though the ideal of living is the endless maintaining of love and light in all things, so that later on, as some of us began to collide with our shadow in rather shocking terms, we had the experience of waking up to this. Many of these people still have not awakened, and those who are lined against them on the other side, good heavens, who knows if they will ever see the shadow within themselves. What is going on now is the endless projecting of individual shadows outward to the other people whom one wishes to condemn, and that is the essence of the problem. If we were able to own the shadow, we would be able to master this opportunity. What else is in the chart? You see a very important concentration of symbols in the sign of Pisces over on the right side of the chart, in the 8th house of changes, the house of death and regeneration, which is ruled by Pluto, the lord of the underworld, and also in the 9th house, the house of institutions of authority, governments, courts of law, banks, other financial institutions. What is going on here is that we are being invited, we are being asked, please notice here that the most important thing of the time is the Piscean principle of dissolving boundaries, of instead of looking for distinctions and separations and judgments, to be able to operate in the manner of the ocean, who incorporates all things into the universal loving heart. This is what we are being offered. This is what we are being asked to consider, especially when you see up at the top of the 8th house the combination of Venus and Chiron the healer, who are in a conjunction this week, as Venus will be moving across Chiron's position until by the black moon on January 27th, she is 2 degrees past his position. This involves necessarily the Chironic principles of wounding, being wounded, coming to terms with victimhood, all of these things. So much of what is in the air right now, and so much of what is being screamed and claimed, is a defiant, astonishing profession of our victimhood by people who would do better to be silently looking for the points of connection. The point of this combination is that naturally the main chironic wounds that we face are the wounds of the missing love relationship, as we all want to love and be loved, and the other, even more common and in some ways chronic and severe chironic wound of the undiscovered purpose and the underutilized gift. When we are not on our game, when we have not discovered our purpose, it is vastly easier to condemn other people. And so what is going on also here is addressed to the Venusian theme of her power of attraction. If Venus is wounded, she will tend to de-emphasize her enormous power of attraction, which allows her to look at whatever she wants and say, come here, I want you, and it comes, because she has a clear and single-minded focus on what she intends, and she has no doubt whatsoever that she deserves it. The more people think they are not deserving, then the more we wind up with the kind of endless, pointless disputation that we have now. Other things that are going on in this chart that are quite interesting here are the relationship between Venus and Chiron in this position we've been talking about in the 8th house, and Saturn down there in the 5th house, in the sign of Sagittarius, in the house of creativity. This angle of the 90-degree square, conventionally considered stressful and difficult, is in fact an angle of leverage, in which the planets are able to use their force to help us dislodge things that we would like to move, but are unable to dislodge by our own efforts alone. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn, to apply ourselves, especially because Saturn is in a 120-degree, very advantageous trine with Uranus, the revolutionary, the trickster, the magician, up there in the 9th house of the chart, in the sign of Aries, the initiator, the fiery bringer of the new. So there is all kinds of opportunity in this chart, especially because Jupiter, the king, the man with the money in the 3rd house, is opposite to Uranus. He's 60 degrees away from Saturn. All kinds of advantageous changes and adjustments can be made now if we are willing to see and respect and love one another. Let us choose love.